Welcome and thank you for learning how Ideal Warehouse Innovations Grid program can save you valuable time when configuring your protective guardrail system. Grid stands for Guardrail Interactive Designer and allows you to easily configure your own customized Ideal Steel guardrail system. To get started in your web browser, navigate to this link. Click on Get Started, which then opens up Grid in a full screen view. Here you'll see two major elements, the drawing canvas and your item selection toolkit. Now, before we get in too deep, please remember that the most basic guardrail system is made up of posts anchored into the floor and rails, either a double or a single row installed between the posts. Later in this video, we'll explore some shortcuts and interesting options. Let's get started by placing our first 44-inch high post, which also happens to be the most common one. There's two ways to go about placing materials onto the canvas. The first one is to go up into your items toolkit, click and drag the item onto the canvas. Okay, and you can do that with your rails, with your lift-out brackets, with your gates, with all the components. Once it's on the canvas, you can then go and modify it and move it around. In the case of the next step, which is adding a rail, there's two ways to do it. One way is to click and drag the rail onto the canvas and have it lock up to the post. And then you can click and drag the rail to the appropriate size and add a post onto the end of it. Another way to do it is to bring a post out and then click on the post. Using this plus sign in the direction that you want to go, it will automatically add a double rail, which is the most common and standard one. From there, then you can go and extend the rail and add a post. So to add a post on the end, you can click and drag one in there, or you can hit the plus sign like I did, and it automatically adds a 44-inch post. The other way to go about this is to resize your rail using a dialog box. So I clicked and dragged, but here I can go and adjust it to whatever size I want. So I type in the number of inches that I want the rail to be, and then I use these arrow buttons to decide which way it's going to lengthen or shorten. In this case, I changed it to 8'5". Now I can take my post and bring it over here. One thing that you'll notice is that the rail system is a candy striping color until you've got it properly configured, meaning that you need to add a post onto the end of it. So you obviously need two posts on each side of rails to make this happen. So from there, I can now go and add more rails. And one thing to note is that as I click and drag this rail system, it's going in 1 foot increments. So our standard rail configurations come in 1 foot increments from 2 feet to 10 feet long. So I can take this up to 10 feet long in 1 foot increments by dragging this green dot. And then by adding a post, it's properly configured. Another way to change the rail size is to go into a custom configuration. So let's say 6 feet isn't quite enough. What I can do is I can click on this green dot, press Control, and now I can move it by the inch. Okay, so if you need a bit of a tighter space, then you can do that, and then you add your post onto the end, and now it's properly configured. So now I'm going from left to right, but I can also now go and add a rail here, okay, and a post. So that's a very standard configuration that you see in front of you here. What I'm going to do is show you the next steps. So now let's say I'm happy with this configuration, suits my needs. I can click on this summary button and up comes the parts list. So you can see I have 4 posts that I need. I've got a custom sized rail in there, and then I've got 2 standard sized rails. Here I can add any notes that I want, and that will be important if I'm sending this configuration on to someone else. So I can click the top right here, lose the summary sheet, and now if I'm happy with everything, I can click Save. What it does is it'll give you an option to open it up in a PDF view. So I'll just do that right now. And this now allows you to see it in a full document. So page 1 is actually the drawing portion of it, and page 2 gives you your bill of materials list as well as a legend to understand what all the different colors mean. And we're going to get into some options a little bit later in this video so that you can see what those actually mean. Another great feature is this little online button that you can click here, this link. If you're having to change something in your design, just by clicking on this link, it will open the grid configuration that you see here back up in the browser, and you can make any changes. So that's a really nice feature. Let's now design a more elaborate system as an L-shaped configuration, which is very common to do, and then add a few features that add to the functionality. One is a single low rail with an 18-inch post. The next is a set of rails with lift-out brackets for temporary access to an area. And finally, we'll add a pedestrian safety gate. So let's get started with the configuration by adding a regular post in place and then extending it with a rail. Now I'm going to use the 10-foot rail because it is the most cost-effective way to build a guardrail system. So these are just your standard double rails that I'm adding with standard posts. And then I'm going to now add a lift gate. So what's important to know is that when you click on the plus sign, it adds a double rail standard configuration there. In this case, I don't want that. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to instead pull in a lift out bracket system. So this is a lift out bracket that'll give us a temporary access point for any loading or unloading that we need to do in the facility or where pedestrians might have to get through from time to time. So here I can click and drag the rail system as I do with all the other ones, but you'll notice something a little bit different in that it adds a dash 2 inches to each size. And that's because there's a 1-inch space needed on either side for the lift out brackets. So the standard configuration comes with an extra 2 inches. Once I'm done with that, I can add the standard post on there, and it's now properly configured in the purple color, which is the color that it's supposed to be over here, and it's no longer candy striping. So the next thing I want to do over here is I want to add a single rail. So again, that's not a standard configuration, so I have to pull it in. And in this case, I will click and drag it to the 10-foot mark and then add a post. So now it's properly configured, but what I added here was the standard 44-inch post. In the case of a single low rail, I don't need that. I can just go with a regular 18-inch post. So I've put that here. And again, it properly configures. So that's your lift out bracket and your single low rail. If I go back over here to create the L shape, I can now come down here, click and drag another 10-foot rail in place, put a post. Now we'll add a gate to this configuration. So I'll pull it in from the menu and locate it on the post, and I'll try to drag it out to 10 feet. Unfortunately, we can't configure a 10-foot gate. The maximum is 4 feet, so it will always default back to 4 feet as the maximum size. Once I add a post, it's properly configured, but I can also adjust this gate down to a smaller size if I want. Okay, so that's properly configured. Now I'll add a last rail in here to 10 feet, add a post, and now I've got the complete L-shaped configuration design. So here, when I click on summary, I'll see all the parts list. I can add a note, please check gate size. Okay, and close it up, and then when I hit save, it will populate a PDF document or open up another browser if you like to see the entire configuration. So let's talk about some tips and tricks for, first of all, moving around the canvas. You've seen me use some of the buttons up here. So there's some arrows, which when you click them, moves the canvas in whatever direction you'd like it to. Another way to do this is to hold the control key and use your mouse to move the canvas around. To resize the view, you can use these magnifying glasses. So to shrink it, you use that one. To enlarge it, you use that one. Again, you can always hold control and use the scroll feature on your mouse if you have that to make it smaller or larger. If you want to at any time see the entire configuration, just click on this button here and it centers and brings you out to the major layout. And when you click X, it will close the screen and take you back out to the standard web page for Grid. If you're staying in that browser, the configuration gets saved and you can get back in. If you exit the browser, you do lose that unless you've saved it here. So let's talk about changing a specific item in your configuration to something that is more suitable for the application. So let's say you wanted to change out this 44-inch post with an offset post, which has the mounting bracket or the mounting plate on the bottom of it just on one side only. So let's say you were butting this configuration up against a wall, and therefore the bottom plate would no longer, or would actually just get in the way. So by hitting the delete key, it takes the post away, and now you can take the offset post and place it in its place. You can potentially take out any of these rails or posts and replace them with other ones that might suit the application better. The next thing we'll talk about is making short work of a large project. So I'm going to zoom back out here, and here's another feature I'll share with you, which is when you select or draw a box around either the entire configuration or maybe just a couple of pieces, it will select those pieces and you can delete those pieces only, or you can delete the entire configuration, which I'm about to do because we're starting fresh here. Let's say you're working on a big project. You'll be here till next Tuesday planting posts and rails for a 500-foot length. It will take you forever. So here's a little shortcut that will help save you a ton of time. So let's say I want to add a rail and I want to take it this way for, I don't know, 200 feet. There's two ways to do that. One is just by clicking and dragging the green button to whatever length you want and letting go will automatically configure 10-foot rail sections and posts to match that size. The only thing you'll have to do then is adjust potentially the end piece here by adding a post or adjusting the size to make it fit perfectly. This will be the end size of the entire configuration. So if you have to adjust by a few inches, you just adjust the rail as we showed previously. That's one way to do it. A more accurate way to do it is to take a post, add a rail, and now double click on the rail until this dialog box opens up. And in the case of adding 200 feet, you'd convert that to inches, which in this case I believe is 2,400 inches. I'm going to the right, so I click done, and it will automatically go and create the rail system that you need. So when you zoom out to the overall size, and now you'll see your entire configuration, at which point you can now go ahead and zoom in, fix that last piece by adding a post or do whatever adjustments you need to make. And when you go ahead and click up here again, it will zoom out to the configuration. So now you'll be able to see your summary, you can save and do all the things that you need to do. So that's a much quicker way of creating a significant length of rail system. So when you're done, you can check all your items, save your file and send it to your Ideal Warehouse Innovations representative for a double check, a cost proposal, and to get the system on order and quickly installed. If you need help at any time, you can click on the instruction button and bring up the instructions, or you can go to the contact page on our website where you can reach out to us for some additional help, and where we can also put you in touch with a local Ideal Steel Guardrail expert for outstanding service. Thank you for choosing Ideal Warehouse Innovations for protecting your people.